Income inequality in the United States.
This graph, seen here, demonstrates how the average American thinks that wealth is distributed in the United States. However, this graph demonstrates that, in reality, the top 1% owns vastly more money than the average American assumes.
We collected data on problems with social gradients, the kind of problems that are more common at the bottom of the social ladder. Internationally comparable data on life expectancy, on kids' maths and literacy scores, on infant mortality rates, homicide rates, proportion of the population in prison, teenage birth rates, levels of trust, obesity, mental illness, which in the standard diagnostic classification includes drug and alcohol addiction, and social mobility. We put them here all in one index. They're all weighted equally. Where a country is sort of average score on these things. And there you see it in relation to the measure of inequality I've just shown you, which I shall use over and over again in the data. The more unequal countries doing worse on all these kinds of social problems. It's an extraordinarily close correlation.
The wealth gap, or wealth inequality, is the measure of the distribution of wealth between the social classes that make up the economic structure of the United States. In basic terms, the wealth gap measures the financial disparity between the rich and the poor. In the United States, if you have no outstanding debt and $10 in your pocket, you are in the top 30% of the wealth distribution. Although the wealth gap in the United States has existed from its creation, it was not researched or studied till the 1900s. The most notable eras for wealth inequality were the early 20th century before the Depression, with big names like John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie, and modern day people with people such as Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. Although the wealth gap affects the overall economy by slowing economic growth due to the lack of consumerism, lower and middle social classes are most affected because of the lack of resources provided to them and the increase in difficulty of social mobility.
With a problem like this, it is often difficult to identify the causes. However, there are most certainly a lack of social mobility in the American social system, exclusive free market economies, the spend money to make money attitude of current business, the federal deficit, inadequate social programs, inaccessibility of higher education to lower income citizens, and the supply side economics practiced greatly in the United States.
What hasn't worked? Reaganomics, supply-side economics practiced and developed during the Reagan administration that focused on across-the-board tax cuts and increased government spending to stimulate the economy. This caused a huge deficit backlash during the George H.W. Bush presidency some years later. Bush tax cuts in 2001 and 2003 were very similar in that they were also across-the-board tax cuts followed by increased federal spending. What has worked in the past? Anti-monopolization, trust busting, the Sherman Antitrust Act. This stopped monopolizing of private sector jobs such as oil, steel, or coal. FDR's New Deal in the Depression era. This increased federal social programs. It created blue-collar jobs, supported unions, raised minimum wage, and it even introduced social welfare. How can we fix it? Well, we can start by increasing spending on the social safety net, such as accessibility to higher education for lower-income families. This is a great first step because easily accessible and affordable higher education can ensure that the newer generations of the lower class will have an equal opportunity to elevate their social status. We can also increase the federal regulation of private sector business. Similarly, we can instill an aggressively progressive tax reform, such as the Buffett Rule.
What is the Buffett Rule? Simply put, the Buffett Rule is a progressive tax reform which eliminates a majority of the loopholes used for tax evasion among the wealthy. The Buffett Rule simply states that no household making more than $1 million per year can pay any less than 30% on income taxes.
If an American wants to live the American dream, they should move to Denmark. Richard Wilkinson.
Unfortunately, with the way the United States set up its social structure, if no action is taken, only one truth remains.